All right. Welcome back to another episode of the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me is my beautiful co-host, Laraib. And we are super excited to start getting in to the Week 2 NFL contests. You'll be seeing this on Thursday at the earliest. So in that case, we already did our preview of the Thursday night football game between the Chiefs and the Chargers on our last episode. So if you want to see what we think about that game, tune in to that episode. It's towards the end of the episode. We also talked about some reactions and reviews from last week's games. So if you want to check out what we said, tune in. But I think we're gonna start getting ready. Anything you want to say before we hop?
Yeah, just a quick reminder one more time, Lewis. We are now on Spotify. Go check us out on there. I know YouTube might be a little bit of hassle for you guys, but Spotify, you can have it on in the background, everything and all that jazz. So make sure you listen to us on there. Besides that, Lewis, how about we get into week 2 and all these previews?
I'm ready.
All right. So first off, we're going to start with your team. The New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are coming into town. And let's see, the Bucs are favored in this one, -2.5. Lewis, what do you have to say about this game?
Yeah, Bucs favored by 2.5 points. I think in all these contests, except for the first one since Tom Brady's been in Tampa, the Bucs have been favored. And in all of them, except for the postseason game and the Bucs Super Bowl one, the Saints have won by at least double digits in each contest. So you understand why the Bucs are favored in each contest. They have a great defense, and what they showed in Week 1 is you have Tom Brady. Tom Brady does not lose a lot of games, and Vegas is always going to say, when in doubt, bet on the GOAT. And that's fair logic. But this Saints team has had his number, and it's hard for me to distinguish saying that there's much difference this time around. The Saints look a lot better on offense, as we saw in that fourth quarter against the Falcons. You saw the full gluttony of weapons get involved. Michael Thomas catching 2 touchdowns. Jarvis Landry, super clutch catches, 114 yards. And Chris Olave came alive in a lot of third down situations and caught the 2-point conversion to put the Saints within 2 points in that game. So all these players showed out. Taysom Hill was brought in. This team just feels a lot more multiple on offense if they can get things going, which was not the case in the first 3 quarters of that game. Now, flipping over to the other side, the Buccaneers had a sound victory in which their defense dominated I would say, a pretty bad Cowboys offense for the looks of things, but they still did their job and they handled business. So I think the biggest key in this scenario is this Bucs defense. What can they do to disrupt Jameis and all these weapons that they weren't really used to in the past few years, the Saints having this many weapons on the outside? How are they going to disrupt that? I don't think they will, and I like the Saints in this matchup.
Well, last week we saw, Lewis, the Falcons ran on the Saints for over 200 yards, and this is only the 3rd time in the last 5 seasons that the Saints gave up 200 rushing yards on the ground. And, it's kind of surprising to this giving up that many yards to this Falcons team. They brought back Cordero Patterson, but he's not really, a running back. He's a wide receiver, but, converted to running back.
He's right? A good running back.
He's a good running back, but, not necessarily – he didn't start as one, right? And then giving it up to, this Falcons offensive line, which really hasn't been good versus, that Saints defense, was a little surprising to me. And then another key thing, the Buccaneers ran for 127 with Fournette last week. And so I think that's going to be the game for the Buccaneers, right? No Godwin for them for at least a couple of weeks with a hamstring issue. So I think it's going to be Fournette on the ground, and let's see what he can do against this Saints front seven. And also, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a little bit of red zone trouble last week against the Cowboys. They got, they got to the money zone, but they couldn't really cash it in except for one time with Mike Evans. And so it's going to be a back and forth game for me, in my opinion. Both these defenses are going to be trying their best to hold these high-powered offenses down, but I think the defenses are what's really going to be the key. But I like the Buccaneers in this one. I know the Saints are 0-4, but you beat me last week in the pick, or the Saints are 4-0, excuse me. You beat me last week in the picks, and so I think this is one of the games where I can catch up on that with you. I like the Bucs in this one, 24-21.
No, you make really sound points. I understand Leonard Fournette. He was a beast last week. But my thinking is this Cowboys defense, that it really is – it's not better than the Saints defense. I'll just say that. The Saints did not look impressive in the first 3 quarters, but they really locked in. I think there was a lot of complacency when they saw their opponent being the Falcons. They didn't really trust this opponent. They didn't fear this opponent. And then, when you start losing, you come back, and thank gosh we came back. I have a lot more respect for the Falcons now. But They're going to be up for this game. And if you think the Saints are going to split with the Bucks, because I don't think we sweep them this year. I said all the history things, but I think this Bucks team is too good for us to sweep them 3 years in a row. That being said, if we're going to split, the one in New Orleans is the one the Saints are going to win. That's why I think they're going to win this game. Give me Saints 26, Bucks 20. And
Yeah,
then moving on, Laraib, we have our next game of the 12 o'clock slate. We have the New York Jets traveling to Cleveland. The Browns are favored by 6.5 points. Laraib, in this matchup, Joe Flacco starting again in week 2. What can he do against this Cleveland Browns defense to give them any signs of success in this game?
I don't think he's going to do much at all. We just saw how they struggled on all phases of, their entire team struggled last week against the Ravens. And going up against this Browns team, we saw Nick Chubb just hammering the ball down the Panthers defense last week. And I think he's going to continue the same this week against the Jets, right? And that's what's going to be the success for the Browns. It's going to be ball control, keeping it out of Joe Flacco's hands and running out the clock and going home with an easy victory. I'm really, not really much to say about this Jets team. Breece Hall really didn't show out that much. Michael Carter looked like he might be the running back one still over there. And, there's not much to say about the Jets until we can see Zach Wilson back in action.
I will say I did like a lot of what I saw from the Jets defense against the Ravens, albeit in the effort, on paper, it looks like they got blown out and you're not going to see much from the game, which is understandable. But they had some really good plays. I really like this young cornerback tandem with DJ Reader and Sauce Gardner, the two rookies. I really like what they have going on those two corners. But it's just the rest of the defense. They're just young and experienced. And I don't think they're the type of team to take a pounding from this Cleveland Browns running game, which looked elite last week against the Carolina Panthers. So my concern would be if the Browns can't get anything going on offense, but it's Joe Flacco. And like I said last week, with my best bet being the Ravens winning this game by more than 6.5 points. Well, it's the same situation with the Browns, and it's still Joe Flacco. You give me 31 NFL teams against Joe Flacco. I like the other team. I do not like this quarterback. He's out of his prime. And it was Mike White who threw the touchdown last week to make the score look respectable. Why isn't he starting? I understand, you're probably not going to be a playoff team, but why not give Mike White the chance? He had a great game last season. It befuddles me. They're going with Joe Flacco. Maybe they have a shorter leash on him this week, which would be in the Jets' favor and to my despair because this is my best bet. I like Cleveland to win this game, and I like them to win it big. Give me Cleveland 27 to Jets 6.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I don't know what they're doing. It's kind of like the Jets motto for the past decade or 2 decades. I agree with you. Give me the Browns in this one. Browns 23 to the Jets 13. But moving on, Lewis, let's move on to another game. We have your Washington Commanders going up against the Detroit Lions. Detroit minus 1.5. Lewis, talk about the Commanders a little bit and what they did last week.
The Commanders last week did a really, really good job of red zone defense. The Jaguars, they moved the ball pretty well. And credits for Trevor Lawrence and this new offense that we're trying to figure things out. But when it came down to the red zone, the Jaguars were 0 for 4 in the red zone and could not get anything going. And they settled for 2 field goals. So I think it's important that if the Commanders want to have success against this Lions team, they need to buckle down in the red zone again. And that's guys, you need to contain Hawkinson, Swift, a lot of guys. And this offensive line of the Lions is very formidable. They had a really great game against that Eagles front last week. And it's hard for me to say they won't replicate that. Everything in my fiber, my brain is pointing towards picking the Lions in this matchup. But I like the Commanders.
And surprisingly, I'm going to agree with you in this one. We saw what their offense did with those receivers last week. Jahan Dotson goes for 2 touchdowns, a rookie. Curtis Samuel had a great game. Terry McLaurin caught a touchdown. And so we saw they had a multifaceted offense. And once again, if Carson Wentz can limit the turnovers, he had 2 really bad ones against the Jaguars, which almost cost him the game. But if he can, have some sort of the same success he did last week, I think they can win this game. And the Lions, they only lost by 3 last week, but most of that came in the garbage time. And the key for them, in my opinion, for winning this game is going to be the ground game with DeAndre Swift. We saw he was explosive last week against the Eagles, going for a touchdown, over 100 yards. And then we saw Amon-Ra St. Brown also ball out. But most of it was in garbage time. And, it's the Lions, right? You don't really trust Jared Goff to make those big time plays. And Carson Wentz, he had some of those big time plays last week looking like his former self. So I'm going to take the Commanders in this one. It's going to be a fun game. One of those early games that you'll just throw on to watch before some of the big ones come on later in the afternoon. But give me the Commanders 27-23.
I'm going to go with my brain. I thought it over, Laraib, and the fact that you picked the Commanders threw me for the biggest loop. I had no idea you were going to do that. And I think you're trying to psych me out here, and it might be successful. But I really like this Lions offense this year. I loved what they were able to do against Philadelphia. And I think this this Commanders defense, like I said, they're really good in the red zone, but that's hard to replicate. And against a disciplined running team like the Lions, it's hard for you to keep on taking those hits. And DeAndre Swift was a beast. So I like this game to be a high scoring game. And ultimately, it's going to come down to which quarterback, makes the most mistakes. And I love Carson Wentz, but I just don't think he has the connection with this offensive line and this receivers like Goff does in his second year with the program. So give me the Lions in this game. I think it's going to be high scoring, 34-31.
Ooh, that is high scoring indeed. Moving on to another game in the 12 o'clock slate, we have the Carolina Panthers visiting the New York Giants. The Giants -2. I'll start off with this one, Lewis. In our latest episode, I said that Brian Daboll would win Coach of the Year with that amazing victory over the Titans and what I predict him to do this season. And, their defense was really solid, right? That was the key for them last game, stopping Derrick Henry, and they're going to have to recreate that success once again with stopping Christian McCaffrey, right? Limiting the run game, not letting Baker set up that play action deep ball to Robbie Anderson is going to be key. And I think they can do it. If they can stop Derrick Henry, in my opinion, they can stop anybody in the league. And so look for them to limit Christian McCaffrey all game. And it's going to rely on Baker Mayfield. Are you going to be able to stand tall in the pocket and deliver those balls? And we saw against the Browns last week, he had pressure in his face all game. He was looking flustered. And he couldn't get it done against, a team that he really hates. Right. And now he's going up against his Giants team on the road. I think it's going to be a really difficult game for him.
Yeah. And I want to look at the other side of the ball. I think this Panthers defense had a really tough test in challenging that Browns potent running game. And it doesn't get any easier this week if we believe that Saquon is back and back to his prime form like he showed us last week. Then this Panthers defense, who gave up over 200 yards rushing to Chubb and Hunt last week, it doesn't make me feel like they can do that again. And Daniel Jones, he was impressive. Only one turnover. I think at home. Now, it's weird. He's a better road quarterback than he is a home quarterback. But I do like the Giants in this one. I think if they can get their run game going, get the ball out of Baker's hands, who was kind of feeling it late in that game. This Giants defense still is very iffy to me. In all extensive purposes, Ryan Tannehill drove down the field in those last few seconds and put them in a position to win. It was just bad late game management by Mike Vrabel to kind of push them back a few yards and then a missed kick by Ryan Suckup. But I do like the Giants in this game. I think Saquon has a masterclass performance. So give me the Giants. It's going to be a really close game. And I ultimately think it's just going to come down to a long game closing drive by the Giants. Give me 23-17. Giants win this one.
And, game tying drive to go down the field to win by 6 points. That's kind of crazy. But I like the Giants this one going down and making an actual game winning field goal. Give me the Giants 27-24.
Game securing drive. They're not putting the ball in harm's risk. They have a safe lead. They're just going to run the ball out and secure a win. And they get a late field goal to make it a 6-point game. So, yeah. Moving on. We have the New England Patriots traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. New England favored on the road by 2 points. Laraib, did this line look a little fishy to you?
It for sure did. If the line was any more in the Patriots' favor, I think the Steelers would be my upset of the week, but we know the parameters for that, at least -3. But, this is a really crazy line to me for sure. The Patriots just looked awful last week. We saw Mac Jones. He hurt his back a little bit. I think he came out of the game. They really couldn't get anything going. We've talked about this before. They have some of the worst skill positions in the in the entire NFL. You talk about they have zero playmakers on the offense side of the ball, in my opinion. You can talk about their running backs. There might be middle of the pack, but still that doesn't put them, nowhere as good as a skill position on the Steelers team, right? You can talk about Mitch Trubisky and how his career has gone so far, but you talk about Najee Harris, Claypool, Deontay Johnson, the rookie, and George Pickens. I feel like even if they can just get the ball into their playmakers' hands, I think they can win this game.
Yeah, it made no sense. I was thinking maybe TJ Watt really skews what you think about this team, but this is still Mike Tomlin at home. Yes, it's Bill Belichick on the other side of the ball, but this Steelers team is just more talented all across the board. And I want to pay attention to, yes, you lose TJ Watt. The last week, Alex Highsmith, a linebacker, had 3 sacks against Joe Burrow. And now, TJ Watt, you could argue, say him on the other side of the ball, he has so much gravity towards him that a guy like Alex Highsmith can get a 3-sack game. But they still have Cam Hayward. They still have Terrell Edmonds, Robert Spillane. They have a lot of playmakers on this team in the secondary, and New England doesn't. They do not have the playmakers. In fact, they have some of the worst playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't see a situation. If the Steelers can score 20 points in this game, they're going to win, and that's exactly what I'm going to predict. Give me the Steelers winning 20-14, 20-10 in this game.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Just an overall better roster for the Steelers in every facet of that. And I'm going to take the Steelers 19-13 against the Patriots. Very questionable line coming out of Vegas in that one. But moving on to another game, we have the Indianapolis Colts, the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts going to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Indianapolis -4 in this one. And, I'm going to say that was a really, really embarrassing outing from the Colts last week, playing against the Texans. I know you're on the road. Matt Ryan's coming in for his first game as a Colt, but you go down big and then you're able to come back, and then overtime, you just look terrible. You missed the field goal. They did let Rodrigo Blankenship go just the other day. And so we'll see what their kicking situation is going to be like for this game. But, we saw last year, the last game, week 17, they needed to beat the Jaguars to get into the playoffs. With Carson Wentz at the quarterback position, they couldn't do it. So I think this is going to be a little faux revenge game for them going to Jacksonville, and let's see if they can get it done with Matt Ryan this time.
So everyone's heard the Colts record at Jacksonville the last 6 years is 0-6. This is just, frankly, for some strange reason, it's not like the Jaguars have been world beaters for the last 6 years, because we know that's not the case. It's just, for some reason, the Colts have bad karma, bad juju, bad voodoo, whatever you want to call it. They cannot win in this building. Well, I think I saw a lot from the Colts in the second half of that Texans game. They didn't come all the way back, but, coward Lovie Smith couldn't just go for the win and try to kick the field goal. Instead, he punted it and wanted to tie. All right, loser. So I love the Colts this week. I think 4 points is an absolute lock. I think if they want to be a team that a lot of people think they can be, this is a game you have to win. Now, I don't think this game is a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, but you can have your first 2 weeks of a season in which you're expected to make the playoffs a tie and a loss to the Texans and the Jaguars. Now, say what you want about the Jaguars this season. They're a surprise, yada, yada, yada. And I like this Jaguars team. I think Trevor Lawrence had a lot of very impressive throws and a lot of missed opportunities in that Commanders game. But at the end of the day, the Colts are a better team, and they need to prove that, or there's going to be a lot of question marks popping up, especially with Frank Reich. And he's a coach that's underrated on the hot seat this season if he can't get it done again with a new quarterback and Matt Ryan, who we all think is an upgrade. But for these reasons alone, and I know I didn't get a lot into the X's and O's, but I just think in my head, there's no way the Colts can lose this game. Give me the Colts in this one. I'm going to go 27-21. Underrated close game, but the Colts, Jonathan Taylor puts it away.
Right, and a big thing for the Colts is linebacker. Shaq Leonard is going to be back for this game. He was out week 1, so the leader of that defense is back. And like you're saying, Trevor Lawrence, he showed some great flashes. They could have won that game last week if they didn't have some bad drops from Etienne, and Fields had a bad pick, and they very possibly could have won that game last week. But I'm gonna agree with you. The Colts, if they want to make the playoffs, it's going to be these type of games that they have to win, right? The Titans go down against the Giants last week, and this division is wide open for them to win. And so I'm going to agree with you. I like the Colts in this one. It's going to be a nice, fun divisional game to watch. Give me the Colts 24 or 27-24.
All right, moving on. We have the Miami Dolphins traveling to Baltimore, Baltimore's home opener, in which the Ravens are favored by 3.5 points. Laura, I want to throw this to you. So last year, the Ravens traveled to Miami in a really shocking game. Lamar had one of his worst games of the season, losing to the Dolphins. And a lot of it was this weird defense the Dolphins were playing, led by Brian Flores. Now, what we saw from Lamar last week was a lot of really good. What does Lamar have to do to beat this Dolphins team this time around?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be using the ground game a lot more. Against the Jets last week, they really had that air raid offense. Two bomb touchdowns from Lamar Jackson. But we see on this Dolphins team, they have weapons on the outside. Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. And so those two guys matched up against the Ravens' top two wide receivers in Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay. I think the Dolphins win that matchup. So it's going to be this ground game for the Ravens, in my opinion. And Lamar Jackson, he's still playing for that contract, right? He's still playing for that 250 million, 300 million guaranteed contract. And so he's going to want to ball out every single game. And so I like the Ravens in the ground game on this one. They're playing at home. A quick couple stats for you, a little history lesson for you, Mr. Butler. Lamar is 3-0 in his first home games to start the season, and the Ravens for the past 6 years are undefeated in their home openers. So I really like the Ravens in this one, Lewis.
Sean McVay was also undefeated in his home openers, but yeah. Anywho, I also see it's tough for me. I think this is gonna be a really close, exciting game. But I think the difference is I really like this Ravens defense this year, and they showed me a lot against. Yes, it was Joe Flacco, but
It's your man, Joe Flacco.
my man, yeah, right. But another one of my men, Tua Tagovailoa, a man I am yet to bet with, and I bet against a few times and have been successful. So I really like how this defense matches up. They have the corners to play against a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle. I love their safety group with rookie Kyle Hamilton, and they brought in Marcus Williams, who had a pick last week from New Orleans, who I'm very familiar with. Really good starter. I love their defensive front. They got to Joe Flacco a lot, and I still don't really trust this Dolphins running game at all for me to really respect them. They need to prove that to me over time. And two tough tests for the Miami in back-to-back weeks in terms of defense. And if they can prove to me that they can win this game offensively and kind of control the pace, I'll be very impressed, but I need to see it. So I'm going to take the Ravens in this matchup. I'm going to go Ravens. Let's go Ravens 31 to Dolphins 28.
Yeah, quick thing about the Dolphins. We know that they brought in Tyreek Hill, and he's given this Ravens defense fits in the past couple of years. We know what type of X factor he can be in these type of games. And him paired up with Jalen Waddle, those two speedsters, they can really break open a game for any team. But I'm going to agree with you. I like the Ravens in this one at home. It's going to be a nice, fun game to watch. Give me the Ravens 28-24.
All right, moving on to the afternoon slate. We have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Los Angeles. And this is when you kind of get a switch in a lot of the games. A lot of the noon games are like close contests, maybe not the best teams, but exciting teams. The theme for these afternoon games is come back after an embarrassing loss, and it starts here with the Los Angeles Rams 10.5-point favorites. Laraib, I'll start on this one. I think the key in this game is going to be Cooper Kupp against this Falcons secondary, which showed a lot in those first three quarters against the Saints, really, providing Jameis with no options to throw the ball. There were a lot of sacks that they got on Jameis, basically because the coverage was perfect. The offensive line didn't play necessarily that bad in pass pro. It was just that he had nowhere to throw the ball. So I think if this secondary can handle Cooper Kupp, which we saw what happened in the fourth quarter when A.J. Terrell faced a big physical receiver like Michael Thomas, which Cooper Kupp is, he had fits. So what can this secondary do to try to take away Cooper Kupp? And can the Rams get Allen Robinson involved? Obviously, the Rams had the more talented team, but there's a lot of intriguing matchups to look forward to in this one.
Yeah, for sure. My fantasy team definitely struggled last week with Allen Robinson, but this is going to be one of those get right games, right? Like you're saying, this whole afternoon slate, we'll get into the other games that are going to come up, but these are get right games, and this is going to start with the Rams. They struggled last week. Everyone besides Cooper Kupp really struggled. Matt Stafford didn't really look like himself. Maybe that elbow injury is something a little bit more serious than the Rams are making out to be. But Falcons blow another lead. What's new? Nobody really showed out for them besides Cordell Patterson. Mariota looked good, but just again, they blow another lead, and I'm expecting the Rams just to dominate in this one. They're on the road. One of those West Coast teams traveling a little bit farther east is sometimes a big problem, but the Rams, well coached team, Super Bowl winning team, and I think they're going to get this one done really easily on the road.
Score
31-20. I think the Rams or the Falcons can cover 31-20 Rams.
So the Rams would cover because it's 10
Rams will cover. Yes.
Okay. So I like the Rams in this one as well. Similar score to you. I just think the talent difference on that. I liked what I saw from the Falcons offense, but it's just a lack of weapons against guys like Jalen Ramsey, who has something to prove after a lot of the hate he got from last week. This defense going to play on fire at home again in front of those fans. So I have the Rams winning 33-20. I think it's just an overall domination, but the Falcons get some garbage time points to make it look respectable.
Yeah, for sure. And then moving on to another game that we have, my 1-0 Seattle Seahawks are going to San Francisco to play the 49ers.
NFC West leaders.
Yes, the number one team in the NFC West currently playing against the 49ers. The line of this one is -9, which is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. We'll get to our best bets later. I'll talk about that a little bit. But we saw out of the 49ers last week, right? Trey Lance, say what you will about the game, the conditions for the game, but in my opinion, he just looked, scared or unready to stand in that pocket against that Bears defense, which really isn't that good. And he looked nervous, in my opinion. He had some bad throws, some wobbly passes, couldn't make the right decisions, in my opinion. Going up against the Seahawks team, which is fired up after beating Russell Wilson last week. We saw Geno Smith throw for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that ground game and that offensive line looked the best it's ever been in Seattle besides the Super Bowl year. And so I like the Seahawks in this one, of course. And that's what I'm going to say, my Seahawks. But playing up against the 49ers team, they've dominated them in the past couple of seasons, and I think that's going to continue for this game, Lewis.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with you more. You watched that same 49ers game as I did last week. It was absolute horrible conditions. You couldn't have asked for a worse weather game in your season opener. Now you get to go back home against a team coming off a Monday Night Football game in which they had the most emotional win of their entire season and expect them to turn it around like that. Yes, to your credit, the Seahawks have had the 49ers number the past few seasons with Russell Wilson at quarterback, to be fair. And in this game, I just think it's the 49ers are going to be the more disciplined team. They're going to be the team with more talent defensively. I think this defense is going to be playing on fire. I liked what I saw from Geno last week, but at the same time, this 49ers defense is no joke. And what I saw Bradley Chubb doing to Charles Cross, the rookie left tackle, in that late in that game, oh my gosh, can you imagine what Nick Bosa is going to do to him on this Sunday? Oh my gosh, it's going to be so bad. It might be a crime. It might be a crime, Laraib. And for this reason, I don't think this game is particularly close. I think the emotions get the better of Seattle coming off a really emotional win. And the 49ers, this is their get-back game at home. They need this one to avoid going into a big hole. And I think Trey Lance proves a lot, and I think he shows. Now, I don't think he's going to show enough to keep his job, but in this game, the stage is set for him to have a really good game. No Elijah Mitchell, but I think Jeff Wilson steps in and does the job admirably. Give me the 49ers. I'm going to go 49ers 38 to Seattle 21.
38. Wow. And you know what? Just like you're saying, Trey Lance, I think the pressure is mounting and mounting and mounting on those small little square shoulders of that little boy. And this week is just going to be too much for him. And, I think Jamie is going to be coming in real soon. It's going to be a tight divisional game. Give me the Seahawks in this one, 21-17.
Now, do you think San Francisco wins if Jimmy Garoppolo plays quarterback?
No.
Really? So Seattle wins no matter who? All right, that's fair. I like you sticking to your guns. But moving on to another contest of a big favorite losing, coming back. Now, this time they're on the road Bengals travel to Dallas to face the Cowboys, who also lost in their opener. Cincinnati is favored by 7.5 points this game. I'll start with this one. I think the loss of Dak Prescott isn't that big of a deal. So Cowboys fans, rejoice. I don't think it's that big of a deal because your offense was going to be bad regardless. It was going to suck regardless of who is quarterback. That's why it's not that big of a deal. And 7.5 is a steal. I mean, unless Joe Burrow has another awful 5 turnover performance, which I don't think is going to be the case, this offensive line for the Bengals is going to get more reps, more chemistry. Joe Burrow coming off an appendectomy, which is no joke. He didn't play a single rep in the preseason. He got his licks in last week. He understood a lot of things. Maybe I don't have the timing on this throw yet. I don't have the strength right now in this part of the season. I think he's going to have a lot more knowledge going into this game. And I love Micah Parsons. I think he is one of, if not the best defensive player in football. It might be a little too early to say that just yet, but I think he definitely has that potential. But it can't be just him if they want to have a chance in this game. And I think they're not gonna have enough defensive support to help them in this matchup.
Yeah, and talk about Parsons. He single-handedly was keeping the Cowboys in the game last Sunday night against the Buccaneers. Right, we saw what he was doing to that Bucs offensive line and holding the Buccaneers out of the end zone. But I think it's just going to be too much for him to handle on his own this week against the Bengals, which you said improved offensive line from last year. And they just have a bunch more weapons. And like you're saying, Joe Burrow, he's going to be in like get ready to get back in the offense. This is a get right game for them, just like we're going to talk about in a little bit about the Texans and the Broncos. It's going to be one of those teams where it's going to overpower their opponent this week, even though they're on the road. And I like the Bengals this one, just like you. They're going to overpower this Cowboys defense, giving the Bengals 27-14.
Yeah, I have a similar score. I like the Bengals in this one. I'm going to go 35-17. Late score by Cooper Rush makes it look a bit more respectable. Moving on now, we have the Houston Texans traveling to Denver to face the Broncos. As a native Houstonian, Laraib, do the Texans have any chance in this game against your former quarterback, Russell Wilson?
Well, they played well against the Colts last week, put up 20 points, but they weren't able to get anything going in the second half. And they're going to play against this Broncos team, which is going to be really, really motivated to win this week. And we saw Matt Ryan, he finally started to click with his offense late in that game and brought them back from a 17-point deficit to take them to overtime. And Russell Wilson, I think he's going to build on some of the connections that he had this last week against the Seahawks. You really don't want to go down big in that division, especially when, we talk about all the good teams in there. And so the Seahawks, I think the Broncos are going to come out swinging against this Texans team. I think just going to overpower them in every facet of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the Broncos in this game. I think last game was a really just emotional. They played in a super hostile environment. Now they go back home. They have their emotions under check playing in Denver. I liked a lot what I saw from Houston last week. I like the control that Davis Mills has over that offense as a second-year quarterback. But going to Denver against this fan base, which has been starving for a playoff berth, knows the opportunity they have. And I think Nathaniel Hackett had a really bad coaching job in that first game. I think he gets a lot of that fixed. I think being back at home is going to help a lot of those nerves. And Russell Wilson is going to play a great game, and they're not going to have 2 fumbles in the red zone like they did last week. So I like some of the young pieces on this Houston defense to not make this game a total blowout. But give me Denver in this one. I'm gonna go Denver 24 to Houston 12 in this game.
And I want to predict a little bit more scoring out of this high-powered Broncos offense. They just have too many weapons. We saw Javonte Williams really showed out last week. Melvin Gordon is a good running back. And then that duo wide receiver of Judy and Sutton, I think they're going to be explosive and really show out this week. Give me the Broncos 30-16. But let's move on to another game. We have the Arizona Cardinals going to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. The Raiders minus 5.5 in this one. And let me talk about the Cardinals a little bit. They just looked really bad last week. I know you're playing against Patrick Mahomes, and he can score 40. He scored 40 points on him, but that's no excuse for Kyler Murray to only put up 21 points and getting most of that in the garbage time, right? I know they lost D Hop, but they brought in Marquise Brown, his former teammate from in college, and they really couldn't get anything going against this Chiefs defense, which we said really they have a few good pieces, but not one of the top units in the NFL. And so you're playing against this Raiders defense, which brought in Chandler Jones. So him and Max Crosby are going to be on Kyler Murray all afternoon, and we'll see what he can do this week. No double battle pass XP in Call of Duty this weekend, so we can see how Kyler will actually start his season off this year.
Yeah, I think it was very uncharacteristic offensive outing for the Cardinals last week. I think it was just an avalanche of a lot of bad things going wrong. Plus, the Chiefs just really not hesitating and scoring. It felt like a touchdown on every single drive, just not giving the Cardinals any breathing room to even think they can come back in this game. I think the story is flipped. I like the Cardinals. I think Cliff and Kyler have a good game plan locked in. JJ Watt coming back from injury. He's going to have his debut in this game, which I think is going to be a big deal because their front did not get much pressure on Patrick Mahomes. And I think against an offensive line last week in the Cardinals, which are in the Raiders, which was absolutely brutalized by Khalil Mack and Chandler Jones, or Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. I think it's going to be a lot of the same problems for the Raiders. The Raiders do have a really good offense, so I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game. But I think the Cardinals have something to prove. On the road in Vegas. Vegas has something to prove as well. But I just like Kyler over Derek Carr in this matchup, honestly. I think another week with Marquise Brown helps him. So give me the Cardinals in this game. I'm going to go Cardinals 38 to Raiders 34.
And I'm going to take it to the other side. I just don't think this Cardinals defense is going to have any answer for Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, or Hunter Renfrow. But let me ask this question real quick, Lewis. For which teams is going to be worse for going down 0-2 in their respective conferences?
I believe it would. I mean, it's the AFC West. It's the Raiders. If they go down 0-2, it's certainly hurting their odds against teams like the Chargers, who've already beaten them, and the Chiefs, who we'll see what happens on Thursday night. But they're definitely in the tougher conference.
All right. I'll be taking the Raiders in this one, 31-27. But moving on to Sunday Night Football, we have the Chicago Bears coming off that amazing victory against the Niners last week, visiting the Packers in Lambeau Field. Packers had a bad outing last week, Lewis. What can they do to fix that this week against the Bears?
I think it's getting to a lot of what they know. I think this is a get-back game to the running game. They weren't really able to run much. They wanted to establish the run. And honestly, their offense, looking back at it, I know I said a lot of bad things about them in our reaction podcast, but they had the fifth most first downs out of any team in the NFL last week. They were moving the ball. It wasn't like that debacle in New Orleans 2 years ago. This was more of a game where they didn't convert in a 4th and goal, and it was a lot of just complacency. They had an interception down there, which is uncharacteristic for Aaron Rodgers. And this is a game in Lambeau. They're going to get down to the fundamentals. They're going to be able to move the ball. And I loved what I saw a lot from that Bears defense last week. But this is Aaron Rodgers. He owns the Bears, and he made it known to them. Funny fact, I think they're tied all time in wins, the 2 most winning franchises. So, or the Bears have one more. So if the Packers win, they are now tied the all-time winning record. Obviously, it doesn't sound that way the past few years. So any more motivation in this case, I'll give it to Green Bay. I think their defense also is a great showing. I just don't like what I see from Justin Fields. What do you think?
Well, whenever you think Bears Packers, you think of a historic rivalry. But let me tell you something, Lewis. The Packers are they've won their last 6 matchup against the Bears, and I think it's going to be the same for them on Sunday night. The key for them, in my opinion, is going to be that running back tandem of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. We saw they were the highlight of the offense last week. I'm going to expect them to continue. I know a lot of our fantasy teams are hoping on these 2 running backs to ball out, and that's what I'm hoping for as well. And that's what's going to be the key to success. Both great pass catching running backs. Get them involved early in the run game and the pass game. Keep the Bears defense honest and set up that A-Rod. We know his play action, deep ball. Set that up for them, and they're going to be having a great night. Give me the Packers this one, 28-14.
Yeah, and your point, I mean, AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, not only, are they really good, but the fantasy is a huge thing. And if I have a guy like Najee Harris on my team and I just his health concerns are a big deal. I would definitely be looking to trade him away for an AJ Dillon straight up, but that's besides the point. I really like I like the Packers in this one. I think they are going to cover. Give me 31-20. Packers win this matchup, and that will lead us directly into our two Monday Night Football games. The first being the Titans traveling to Buffalo to face the Bills. Bills coming off an impressive win. Titans a very disappointing loss. But we remember this game from last year when the Titans traveled to Buffalo. It was a huge Derrick Henry game in which he ran all over the Bills. We didn't see much of the running game of the Rams work at all against the Bills last week. So, what can the Titans do offensively besides the obvious? Derrick Henry go sicko mode. Can the Titans do to make this a competitive game?
Well, it's going to be getting those two receivers in a lot more involved in their offense. You trade away AJ Brown for Treylon Burks, and you're hoping this guy is going to be your number one dude, and he really didn't show that last week.
Yeah.
You bring, I mean, he has some good plays. He showed some flashes, but you can't be against the Bills, right? You have to be on your A game. You bring in Bobby Trees from LA, he had coming off an ACL injury from last season, and he was all right as well. But it's gonna be on Tannehill. We know this Titans offense: run the ball, play action, run the ball, play action, and they're gonna need to be on their A game against this Bills defense, which has been revamped. Von Miller looks like he's on a mission to get his third Super Bowl ring this season, and he does not look like he's slowing down anytime soon. This Titans offensive line, Taylor Lewan, he got injured in the last game. He came back in the game to play, but he's dealing with a little bit of an injury, so he's gonna have his hands full with Von Miller and Ed Oliver all night, along with our guy Matt Milano leading that defense in the middle of the field. And so for the Bills, I think they played last Thursday, have the extra rest coming into this game. They are 0-2 against the Titans in their last two games, but I think the Bills, their offense is just going to overpower this Titans team.
Everything in this game points to the Bills dominating, and they really should on paper. But it's hard for me to count the Titans out in this matchup. I just think if Derrick Henry has the game he had last year, this defense for the Titans played really well. They shut out the Giants in the first half. It was just Saquon having the game of his life, honestly, that saved them in the end. And they should be 1-0 as well, like the Buffalo Bills, if it wasn't for a missed kick at the end of the game, which was honestly kind of uncharacteristic from Randy Bullock in his career. But as much as I'd like to see, and I think the Titans have a better chance, I think the Bills eke a win out at home, and it's not going to be pretty coming off of more than 10 days of rest. So give me the Bills, but it's going to be 31-30, game-winning field goal from Tyler Bass.
Well, I like the Bills in this one as well, Lewis, but I think their offense is just too much for this Titans D to handle. Titans give up 238 rushing last week, and we can expect a big game from Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, and their rookie running back James Cook in this one, in my opinion. The Bills all around, Vrabel has had their number in the past couple of years, but I like this Bills team. Super Bowl aspirations for them this year, and I don't think they're going to let off the gas pedal against this Titans team. So give me the Bills 31-24.
Yeah, and then moving on to our final game of the week, what I think outside of the Kansas City Los Angeles Chargers game, which is happening tonight as you're hearing this, if you're listening to this on Thursday, I think this is the best game of the whole week. These two teams, two fringe playoff teams last year, and then looking really good in week one. Vikings travel to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is favored by 2. Despite Philadelphia being the favorites, Laraib, I think you like the Vikings. Explain to me, why is that?
Well, I just think they have the best weapon in offensive weapon in all of football in Justin Jefferson. We saw him go for 181 and 2 touchdowns last week against a divisional opponent in the Green Bay Packers. And I think he's going to do more of the same this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. I will say my boy Kirk Cousins is 2-9 on Monday Night Football. And guess who those 2 wins are against? Chicago
Boys.
No, the Chicago Bears, both of them. So those don't really count as wins in my book. So in my opinion, in actuality, he's 0-9 in Monday night games. But you know what? This is a year that the Vikings turn around. New head coach Kevin O'Connell. I said Brian Daboll was going to win Coach of the Year, but Kevin O'Connell is going to be runner-up for head coach, in my opinion. I feel like the Vikings, Their defense was on fire last week. I couldn't witness what I was believing last week with
Did
that.
not.
I could not. Zadarius Smith, and he was going crazy along with all the other guys that they have on defense. And I think if they can get to Jalen Hurts, they have a chance in this game. We saw this Eagles defense give up 35 points last week to the Lions, albeit, here touchdown here or there in garbage time, but still that's 35 points to Jared Goff. And so if they can get going early, we saw DeAndre Swift run all over the Eagles last week. I expect a lot more from Dalvin Cook this week. And so I really like the Vikings on all sides of the ball.
I think this game in Philadelphia, and you said it yourself, Kirk Cousins on Monday night. I mean, do what may I say more? This Eagles team at home, you had to love what you saw last week from A.J. Brown. 150 yards in his first meeting and his first game with Jalen Hurts, 12 catches. And one of the disturbing things was Devontae Smith, their first-round pick from last year, had 0 catches.
Wow.
Yeah, 0, which was shocking. But you expect that to turn around as it was just A.J. Brown's game. So this offense has so many weapons, and I loved what they did running the ball against this Lions team, who they have a pretty young, hungry defensive front, and the Vikings have a good defensive front on their own. But Jalen Hurts is just a different animal on the run. Kenneth Gainwell was getting in on the action. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott. They just have so many revolving door of runners who can beat you in so many different ways that I loved what they were doing offensively against the Lions last week. And then on defense, yes, they gave up 35 points to the Detroit Lions, which is not a great sight. But I think it's just Kirk Cousins and the primetime lights. Justin Jefferson is a baller, but he is facing 2 really good corners in James Bradbury and Darius Slay on the outside. And if they do move him in, which Kevin O'Connell, to his credit, was doing a lot of getting him mismatched, I think he's going to have a harder time trying to get those mismatches against the Eagles team, which goes with a lot of nickel packages. They're going to throw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out there, safeties in the slot who are more used to covering one-on-one. Now, I think it's a fool's errand to try to cover Justin Jefferson one-on-one in this game. But in those times, in those matchups where you just get switched onto him, I have more faith in this Eagles secondary to do the job the Packers could not do with just one shutdown corner last week. I think this is going to be a really high-flying, exciting game. I really just can't wait to see it. I like the Eagles for the fact that they're at home and it's Kirk Cousins in prime time. I know it's not a lot of basis in that, but I love this Philadelphia Eagles offense, which I'm going to predict the Eagles win 44-41. Go Birds. Game of the year.
These two teams, Lewis, we're predicting high hopes for them. So for either one of these teams to go up 2-0 is going to be a really big advantage in this NFC.
Huge.
But I really like Dalvin Cook in this game. If he can recreate what DeAndre Swift did last week, I think the Vikings have a really good chance to win this game. I'm going to take the Vikings 30-27. Any final comments on that, Lewis?
This is really a coin flip game for me. I like Kirk Cousins a lot more this year, and I love what Kevin O'Connell's doing over there. But I just trust the Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts pairing in a big-time game, which Jalen Hurts has experience in through his years of college. So I like the Eagles here by a hair. But what I will say about this game, Laraib, is it's going to be super exciting, and it's going to play alongside this Titans-Bills game, which I also think is going to be a fun game. But man, is this Monday night going to be a ton of fun?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
gonna need 2 TVs.
Yeah, everyone is going to be glued to the screen watching both those games. But Lewis, let's move on. Let's do our locks and upsets of the week. On our Tuesday episode, I said I will be going first, and I picked my upset of the week to be the Los Angeles Chargers against the Kansas City Chiefs. I know history really isn't on my side. Pat Mahomes in September and Kansas City at home. But I like the Chargers in that one, Lewis. What is your next pick?
My upset of the week, it was tough picking this one. A lot of our lines weren't really favoring me. I didn't like a lot of them, but I ultimately ended up picking the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Las Vegas. I just think their offense figures it out. They're an early season team. No double battle pass weekend today. So I think Kyler Murray should be well educated on the game plan. And I think he's going to show it in an offensive shootout. Give me the Cardinals as my upset.
All right, and let's move on to our locks. Just a quick reminder: our locks, the favorite or the spread can only be -6.5 at the most. And so, with that being said, I will be taking the Baltimore Ravens as my lock of the week. Like I said, Lamar Jackson 3-0 in his home starts or his home openers. Ravens 6-0 in their home openers for the last 6 years. Playing against his Dolphins team. Tua really we've seen him underneath the bright light. With Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, let's see what he can do. But I like the Ravens in this one. Like you're saying, the defense is just going to be too much for Tua, in my opinion. And so the Ravens are my lock of the week.
Yeah, and then for my lock of the week, I have the Indianapolis Colts. I just think that in their first two games against the Texans and Jaguars, if they come out of those two games 1-1, their season's going to look very shaky, and Frank Reich's job's going to look very shaky. So I think there's a lot of precedent for them to come out, win this game, get rid of their demons in Jacksonville, and I think they're going to do it. I like the Colts as my lock of the week.
All right, and Lewis, let's move on to our new segment that we have, our best bet of the week. Lewis, what is your best bet of the week, sir?
My best bet. I'm not as confident in it as I was last week for the particular matchup, but I'm going back. I'm double dipping. I love this matchup. It's Joe Flacco versus any NFL team, and this week it's the Cleveland Browns. We saw what their defense was able to do last week to Baker until he kind of figured it out. The best thing about Joe Flacco is he won't figure it out, and this Cleveland their running attack is really impressive. And I liked some of the stuff they were able to do on the outside. I don't think they'll have as much success on the outside because of the two corners, but I think they'll do just enough in the running game and just enough in the Joe Flacco department for them to secure at least 7-point win. Give me the Browns as my best bet, 6.5 points.
All right, and then moving on, my best bet of the week is going to be the Seahawks plus 9.5. Like I was saying, this is a divisional game between two rivals who really know each other very well. I like the Seahawks to win this game outright, but a plus 9.5, I'm a homer, but plus 9.5 for the Seahawks makes a lot more sense for everybody else. Divisional game, I don't see them losing by, more than a touchdown. It's gonna be a really tight game. Like I was saying, Trey Lance disappointed last week, and the pressure is gonna keep on mounting and mounting on him. And so we'll see what he can do against the Seahawks defense, who played really well on Monday night. Short week still, but I like the plus 9.5 for the Seahawks.
All right, so that'll do it for our previews of week 2 of the NFL season. Like we said in the beginning, you can catch this episode on Spotify, YouTube, and then we're trying to also expand to other streaming platforms. We'll let you know as we progress through this process. We want to thank all of you for making it this far if you have listened. Anything else, Laraib, you want to comment on before we end this episode?
No, Lewis, just another great game of NFL games, and I'm excited to see what all these teams can do. Hoping for that Super Bowl in February.
Absolutely. All right. And we are going to sign off now, getting ready for the week ahead. Y'all have a safe weekend. This is First and Goal signing out.
See you.